Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn, and today I am so excited to have Mara Langer on my show. So Mara is a two-time breast cancer survivor, nonprofit leader, and passionate community builder whose life has been shaped by resilience, family, and service. She serves as a director of community engagement for Northern Nevada at Jewish Nevada, where she is dedicated to bringing people together, strengthening Jewish life, and creating meaningful opportunities for connection, volunteerism, philanthropy, and community engagement. In addition to her professional role, Mara serves on various local boards and committees and is passionate about building partnerships that strengthen and enrich the Northern Nevada community. Following her own cancer journey, Mara has become an advocate for early detection, self-advocacy, and living life with intention. Through patient advocacy programs, she shares her story to empower others facing a diagnosis and to remind everyone of the importance of knowing their bodies, trusting their instincts, and advocating for themselves. Above all, Mara is a wife, mother, friend, and believer in the power of community. She is passionate about helping others find connection, embrace life's adventures, and recognize that even life's greatest challenges can become opportunities for purpose and growth. Cancer became a chapter in her life, not the title of her story. Well, hello, Mara. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here, and I love your bio. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting us to be here. I'm really excited to share our story.
Me too. And we're really excited also that you have your husband, David, on the show. And I'm so glad, David, that you were able to join us today. Can you let our audience know a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. My name's David Langer. I've been married to this lovely woman for 24 years, so I tend to get a little emotional.
I got a little emotional, David.
I do too.
I'm really glad that you're here.
Thank you. So I've been in the waste and recycling industry for 35 years, and so have been planning and developing recycling and environmental solutions for that time. It's been a very exciting adventure, and certainly it's, as a partner of Mara, it's been a true pleasure as we've gone through this together.
Well, I am, again, so glad that you're here because we know that our partners are a huge part of our journey. And my husband and I have quite a story ourselves. And we actually interviewed on this podcast when I first started it at the very beginning. I had someone interview both of us about our journey. And I just think it's really important because most people don't know that there's a pretty big percentage of divorce rates when it comes to a breast cancer diagnosis, and which is absolutely tragic. So I'm so glad that you are here and that you're here to tell the story about your experience with Mara. First, I am going to start with you, Mara. I interview a lot of survivors. Everyone has a different story, especially when it comes to this next question. We all change in some way. I'm the same Jamie at the core from before breast cancer, but I have a lot of differences now, especially working in this space. I would love for you to share with our audience who Mara was before your breast cancer diagnosis.
So I like to say cancer's always been a part of my life. I share with everyone that my mother and my grandmother's sister, so my great aunt, all passed away from breast cancer. So I knew in my core that breast cancer could touch my life within my lifetime. But it didn't define me, just like the breast cancer diagnosis didn't define me. I was a go-getter. I was a professional. I have a background in sales and corporate training. I was lucky enough to meet David on a blind date. And, we connected and moved forward in our relationship and talked about having a family. And I talked to him about my family history, what I thought were my genetics. Little side note, I'm actually not a BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene variant. I actually am not any of the panel that's been released as of now. So I have what's called familial or family, like it's a family disease, familial. It's just not genetic. It hasn't been identified as genetic. I am a textbook case for the genetic diagnosis. And because of that, I had a lot of education, knowledge, and experience in breast cancer, living through my mother's breast cancer, my grandmother's breast cancer, all of that. So who was I? I was a vibrant 30-something-year-old woman who had just had a baby and was focusing on the next step of her life and her family's life. I was a friend, mother, all those things. Life, and sometimes life gives you a pivot, and that's what breast cancer did.
It's really interesting because when I was diagnosed, I found out that 15% of people who get breast cancer have it in their family. So when I got diagnosed, people were like, well, who in your family has it? Well, no one who or had it. And I said, well, no one that I know of. And when they did the genetics test, there was nothing. But I also know that somebody in my family could have had it, but it's still not genetic. And so it's just, there's a lot of nuances there, and it's very complex and it's hard to understand.
I think it's important to also say that breast cancer lineage, genetic versus familial or historic, isn't always breast cancer. There's so many other cancers that can be a red flag for our oncology cancer doctors. And that's why I really push knowing your family history. Is there uterine cancer? Is there ovarian cancer? Is there any type of prostate or hormonal cancer in the paternal side of your family? Because the breast cancer can travel through our genes, right? We get 50 and 50 from our parents, and it can travel through a male DNA as well as a female DNA. People don't always realize that. They're like, oh, my mother's side's healthy, nothing's wrong. But it can be your paternal side as well. And men can also get breast cancer.
Yes, very good point. Thank you for pointing that out. So important to know, knowing your risk. And there's not just one risk. There are a myriad of them. And so to pay attention to that. So when was your diagnosis? And you're a 2-time breast cancer survivor. Walk us back to that first diagnosis and let us know how you found out, what the treatments were, all the things.
So I think it's really important also to reiterate that I knew my family history. I knew that it was important to share that family history with every doctor that I had. My mother died when she was 42. My grandmother died postmenopausally, but my mother had a pretty aggressive breast cancer from the age 36 to 42. And so I would talk to my doctors about it. Do I stay on the pill? Do I go off the pill? Do I talk about gene variances? What do we discuss? And I had a gynecologist who said, you're hitting 30, you're hitting the age that we would recommend you starting mammograms. I want you to meet an oncology doctor and have a list of questions and ask her, it was a woman I saw, ask her what you're thinking and what you're feeling. So I did just that, and I started mammograms at age 30, And because I had that baseline, I cannot stress it enough. Everybody needs a baseline at some point in time because that's what they look at to compare things to, right? So I went ahead and the oncologist was wonderful. She said, go live your life, go have children, do what you want to do. And if something happens in between, we'll deal with it. Otherwise, we'll talk when you're older, right? Like let's just monitor you as you're moving through life, eat healthy, exercise, do all those things that are important for a healthy lifestyle. And then we'll address things as they come along. David and I were married, and our daughter was born in February of 2004. And I tried to breastfeed, and it was very, very challenging. And then interestingly enough, the doctors say that has nothing to do with my breast cancer, but for whatever reason, I just had that challenge. And I think a lot of it was psychosomatic, actually, because I knew if I had a child before 35, and if I breastfed that child, it would decrease my my risk of breast cancer, right? I mean, that's in all the literature that you see. So I worked really hard at it, and unfortunately, I wasn't that successful. So after 4 months of attempting to do this, I was like, this is enough. The psychosis of my mental health is far more challenging than just formula feeding. Like, we're all formula fed, right? I'm going to give this kid formula. So I had missed my regular mammogram because I was pregnant. I went back and had what was then the annual mammogram, and it came back with some irregularities. So I went back, and I had another mammogram, and the result of the mammogram came back as an identification of DCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ. It's like stage 0. But because of my family history and because of my age, I was almost 36 at the time. It was really very serious, and we had to make some decisions. So we went ahead and had the genetic testing. The genetic testing came back as negative or no variants. But we decided to be as aggressive as we could. And so I had a bilateral mastectomy, which means I had both breast tissues removed, even though it was only indicated in one breast. And I had something called a deep flap reconstruction, where they took the fat and it was a
the autologous surgery with a microsurgeon. Yeah.
With a microsurgeon. They didn't flip my tissue. They actually moved my tissue. So I thought, wow, here I'm going to get a tummy tuck and a boob job postpartum. And I mean, I like to look at things as the glass half full. So I'm like, all right, if this is how I have to face cancer, I guess I'll take it, right? It turned out to be more than we expected. It was a 14-hour surgery, an 8-week recovery, and many subsequent cosmetic surgeries afterwards because of complications from the initial surgery. I was in ICU for, I think it was probably 2 weeks. My recovery as a whole was over 8 weeks long. It was crazy. We grew and survived it. And then we knew we wanted to have more children. So as David says, we practiced quite a bit. And
I like that.
I could get pregnant really easily, but I couldn't keep the baby. I had 2 miscarriages within a couple of years, and the third's the charm. The third baby, I took some medicine to help keep the fetus in a survival mode. We had a viable fetus, and I was now 38 years old. Our first pregnancy, we didn't find out if it was a girl or boy. We wanted that surprise. But the second pregnancy was more, what are we going to do? Do we switch everything around? It was a little bit more like, we should probably find out. I ended up having what was called a CVS test pretty early on in my pregnancy. And we found out we were having a boy. And it was so exciting. Like, here I actually faced this diagnosis that I had a feeling was coming. I had an amazing husband, an incredible family, and I was going to have 2 kids, a girl and a boy. And like, what else? Like, my life was wonderful. David mentioned to me, he said, you don't have any breast tissue to feel like when you're pregnant, your breast tissue fills up.
Mm-hmm.
What does it feel like? So because my mother taught me how to do self-breast exams, and I had experience with even a sample of what a tumor might feel like. It's a fake boob and you find the tumor. The model tumor. I knew what a tumor might feel like. I was feeling around and I happened. So I don't know if you know this, Jamie, but most breast cancers are discovered in the left breast.
Oh,
and
no, I
have
didn't.
a theory on this because most people are right-handed, right? So where am I going to start palpitating first? On my left side. So that's my scientific theory as to why women find most breast cancers on their left side. But here I was palpitating and feeling, and I was actually touching like my tummy tissue. My margins had been clear. There was nothing of an indication. I found a lump. I found what turned out to be an 8-millimeter pea-sized bump where my old tissue met my new tissue. I want to return just a minute to my previous diagnosis where it was determined that I didn't need chemotherapy. My DCIS pathology came back as ERPR negative. So this radical mastectomy that we did, the bilateral mastectomy, was supposed to be enough to take me forward through the rest of my life.
Yep.
So here I found this lump, and I obviously had a panic attack. And my husband, being the calm rock that he is, said, don't panic because we don't know, and let's just figure it out. I ended up dropping our daughter off at preschool, and I had a friend who was a GP. So I pulled her into the bathroom and I said, can you please help me and tell me what you think? And she said, it moves around, so it might be okay. I don't know. You need to go get it looked at. So we both happen to know the radiation oncologist at the breast center near our house. And we called her and she got me in right away. And of course I walked in and they said, well, let's set you up for mammogram. And I said, I can't have a mammogram. I don't have any breasts. Number one. Number two, I'm pregnant. And so I wouldn't be able to have a mammogram anyway. So they said, oh, okay, fine. We'll get you into ultrasound. So I get into ultrasound and the radiation oncologist came back and said, well, it is a mass and it's 8 millimeters in size. We need to do a biopsy. So she did a biopsy right then and there. Now, this was on a Friday, and I left, and I'm like, everything's okay. I'm pregnant. There's no way I would be facing this when I'm pregnant. No way. So obviously I fretted and wrung my hands all weekend. David, my rock, don't worry. We don't know anything. Just let's take it one day at a time. Monday rolls around, and my radiation oncologist calls and says, I cannot believe I'm telling you this, but you have high grade. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get emotional. Sorry. You have a high grade invasive breast cancer.
Oh man.
It's not a reoccurrence. It's a new cancer. And that's really good news because if it was a reoccurrence, it would be far more serious. But this is a new occurrence. And for whatever reason, it's decided to show itself now. And the fact that you found it under your armpit at 8 millimeters is a miracle. Like when I went in for the ultrasound, she was like, wait, help me find it. I need you to direct me to where it is. So, okay, here I was pregnant and having a second diagnosis. We had to do so much research, so many decisions. Do I keep the baby? Do I not keep the baby? What does chemo look like? What's the next steps? So David, the amazing man that he is, went through each step with me. I'm not going to tell you all the details because that would be forever. But the ultimate bottom line is we decided that there's actually studies out of MD Anderson that track women with breast cancer. There's women who go through other types of cancer treatment while they're pregnant, but we happen to be following the breast cancer protocols that show that there's healthy, vibrant babies born after adriamycin cytoxin, after what was to be my first round of chemotherapy. The first step was to get the tumor out. So I had a bilateral mastectomy and then I had a lumpectomy, right? which is just crazy because
Mhm.
that's not usually the way it goes. But I had a lumpectomy. I had a Doppler right after the lumpectomy that showed that the baby was fine and viable. And then I went on and I had to get to a certain period of gestation before I could start my chemo treatments. He had to be a little bit stronger and more developed. We started chemo treatments when he was at 20 weeks gestation. And I had one doctor's appointment after another. I had my OB, I had my perinatal specialist, I had my oncologist, I had my breast surgeon, like so many appointments. And everybody was like, "What can we do for you?" And I'm like, "Nothing. Just leave me alone. Like, I don't want to see anybody. I just want to be left alone." But I was able to go through adriamycin cytoxin while he was in utero.
Mhm.
I had radiation, Taxol, and Herceptin following that. And it was a journey. It was quite a journey.
Mara, that is such a powerful story. The fact that you found that lump by yourself and you had to actually guide the ultrasound tech to find that lump, that's going to really set us up for a great conversation about why you do what you do today. And that is advocating for people to know their body, and early detection is key to a better outcome. So we'll come back to that in a second. But David, I want you to take us back to the moment that you found out, even the first time that Mara had breast cancer. What was going on through your mind?
Mara has always talked about it with her mom and testing and how important it is. So it's something that, we've talked about and you're supposed to be prepared for it. But anytime something like this happens, I think the biggest thing is the unknown of, oh my gosh, this is happening. What does it all mean? How will it impact Mara? What are the next steps? How can I be there for Mara to make sure I take care of her and protect her for something that I have no control over? So those are certainly a lot of the things that were going on in my mind. I tend to be somebody that's a problem solver. First, I try to fix the problem, and then I can take care of myself later. But that was my initial thing, was just the unknown in the world of what we were going to be going through together to figure out what's happening at each stage. And sometimes it's this wait and see process, right? You learn something and you have to wait for an answer. Say like, oh, this could be. And so you try to be positive, and then you learn, okay, it is. And then what's the next step? So that was really the initial thoughts that were going through my head and how we were going to tackle this together.
Yeah, and I feel like there are some spouses who have a hard time with really having to go through those emotions and actually allowing it to happen, just allowing all of these emotions go through you. And the importance of being able to do that, because I think that sometimes people suppress those emotions. And I do think that there are a lot of people who really do want to fix the situation. And in this case, just like my husband, he couldn't fix it. What he could do was be there right by my side every step of the way with all of those overwhelming amounts of appointments, like you were talking about, Mara, all the doctor's appointments. I will never forget the day that I was going to get my port installed. We went to I think it's called like City of Hope, or over there at Cancer Care Specialists right behind it. And I was going in for my PET scan. And then later that day, he was taking me to the hospital to get my port. And I remember I got out of the car and I looked up at the title and I just lost it. I had a complete and utter meltdown right there in the parking lot, dropped my glass water bottle. My husband had to come and pick me up literally and carry me into my appointment. And I was just bawling because at that moment, I thought to myself, holy shit, this is my life now. This is like literally my life. I just retired from the school district and now this is my life. And that is when it really, really hit me. And so having my husband by my side like you have been for Mara, David, is everything to the person who is going through the diagnosis because it affects your life too.
Absolutely.
When you hear my story and I talk about it, I really try to talk about us making decisions, our children, that
Yes.
we're such a partnership that it really was a plural decision, right? It wasn't just me making these decisions because it affected our whole family and our future together. And I think that's something for partners to keep in mind as you're going through this diagnosis, that while each of you wants to solve the problem, the more that you can have open conversations about your fears, about your concerns, about just where you're feeling in that moment, the healthier those conversations can
Yeah.
be. And to be able to tell your partner, hey, I don't need you to solve it. Like, we're not solving it. This is something that we have to figure out together. It's going to be a multi-step process.
Mhm.
And so let's just take each step at a time is the healthiest way that you can approach it. Again, there's some decisions that were mine alone. But at the same time, I wanted him to hear that those were my decisions and why I was making those decisions. I think the other really critical piece of this conversation is that while you might recommend to somebody going through treatment, do this, do that, do this, one of the critical pieces of it is to make sure that your support system, whether that's your husband, your sister, your best friend, whoever it is, that they have a support system as well,
Yeah.
because they're carrying such a heavy load and they're taking care of so many things that you're not able to at that period in time. And they need outlets. They need opportunities to get together with friends. They need downtime. And I think it's really critical that we recognize that as the patient, that we allow that to happen. We have a family joke that David loves soccer. And so we tried every opportunity we had that he got to go play soccer. It was just part of our routine and it wasn't going to change because that was his ability to have his normalcy.
Absolutely. 100%. And I do think you bring up such great points, Mara, because for one, I remember that my husband and I made decisions together. He went to every doctor's appointment with me. We talked about things. He took copious notes, and I was very open about my diagnosis. I was on Facebook, I had a group and everything, and I updated everyone based on what I heard and what his notes were saying. And we had a caring bridge. And the only decision that I wanted him to agree with me on, that he did not at first, until I told him that this was my body, and that was going to New Orleans to get that deep flap surgery, because I had the same surgery that you did. And he could not figure out why I couldn't do it here in Reno, Nevada. And I had to tell him because there are no fellowship trained microsurgeons that eat, sleep, and breathe that kind of surgery. And I was not going to let anyone touch my body doing that here in Reno, Nevada, not until we had somebody here. When I said that to him, he was like, "You're right. Oh my gosh." And then he went with me, and he would tell you to this day that it was the best decision that I could have made. But also the other point that you made is that the caregivers need that support system. And that's where Cancer Community Clubhouse here in our area comes into play. With founder Natalie Stevenson brought that to Reno. And I know you have been there, and that it is a wonderful space for anyone who is touched by cancer.
Friends and family that help in a big way. I mean, certainly we were having meals delivered, 3 times a week, people taking the kids, people preparing pampered baskets for Mara, with socks and creams and whatever.
Sounds like you
But
had a
that
really
just,
good support system. That's
it
amazing.
really made a huge difference. And so people were upset because the signups would be taken quickly.
It's
So
funny when somebody had suggested that I do a meal train, my husband's like, "We don't need that." I'm like, "Yeah, we do." I said,
yeah, when you have
yes,
2
we
young
do, and we
kids
will
and
have
all
it."
that stuff, we just asked them not to bring us a whole pie every meal.
Yeah. It's like we don't need to be eating our way through that, although you do want to eat
good, healthy food.
For sure. And then also this was during chemo sessions, they're an hour or two plus, and she would have friends that would come and sit with her. And it was just a great bonding.
So nice. Mara, oh my gosh, that makes me so happy that you
Yeah.
had that support system, because we know that some people do not have that. And so it's critical for the breast cancer community to be there for people who don't have that. They really need that guidance. And it is a
Absolutely.
big community. It's the sisterhood of all sisterhoods, I have found.
David just said this, that he restated a comment that I make, is it's not a sisterhood I would ever invite
Mhm.
anybody to be a part of. I'm not asking you to join me, but once you're a part of it, you meet the most remarkable, amazing, incredible women on
Yes.
their own journeys, right? And your
Yes.
friends that come and step up in ways that you never
Mhm.
would have thought they would. And you're just so grateful for everything. I say a lot, like David's talking about my chemo treatments. I mean, if I can look at the glass half full, it made me slow down. It made me be grateful and slow down and have meaningful conversations with people that I hadn't had in a really long time.
Mhm.
And just being able to take a breath and see that. I also want to touch on your statement about the increase of breast cancer, and especially among young women. I agree with that. However, I also want people to take a step back, and there's a caveat to it that, first of all, I often get a question like, I can't believe we haven't cured breast cancer yet. This is ridiculous. It needs to be cured. Every diagnosis is different. Every
Mhm.
pathology is different.
Mhm.
And the advancements of our breast cancer treatments and outcomes are significantly different than when my mother went through it, 40 something years ago. And even your diagnosis from my diagnosis, because it was a span of probably 10 years or so, we have oncotyping, we have sentinel node biopsies, we have personalized medicines, we have different types of chemos to be able to address different types, even the development of Herceptin. So to get to Herceptin, so my first diagnosis, there was no reason for Herceptin because it wasn't invasive, number one. Second of all, it was only available to metastatic patients. It wasn't available in a neoadjuvant type of setting. So I say, if there was a second reason why I'm going through this again, it's because of Herceptin. It's because the people at Genentech work so hard to get that FDA approved, not only for metastatic cancer, but for neoadjuvant. So there's one more arsenal that those of us who are negative in different pathologies can fight and create these weapons against the outlying cancer cells that might be floating around in our body after our cancer is actually removed. Right?
Yeah.
I always say the more positive diagnosis you have in a cancer treatment actually is the better, because then you have more arsenal to be able to attack it. And people often feel like, oh, but I have to go through so much. But yes, and yes, you do.
Mhm. Mhm.
But look at all the advancements we've had to be able to allow
Yeah.
you to do that.
That is literally one thing I had never thought of. I haven't thought about a lot of things, but to look at it that way is such a different positive viewpoint. So thank you for bringing that to our audience and my attention, because that's true. It makes complete sense. And it also, people ask a lot of questions. Part of it is just lack of knowledge. And that's why I do what I do today, is bringing that education about knowing our bodies, knowing the 12 signs of breast cancer, knowing your risk, knowing how to advocate for yourself, not just when we get diagnosed, but before we're diagnosed, much
Yeah.
like you were educated about all of this before you ever even had a diagnosis. And I knew a lot about breast cancer before I got it, but I cannot even tell you how much I did not know. And we think about these people who are being diagnosed in their 20s and 30s, they practically know nothing because we don't really learn about breast health, when we are younger. And that is something that I'm trying to change in Northern Nevada.
I think the increase in diagnosis also is critical to understand, because first of all, our life expectancy is growing, right? And so that postmenopausal breast cancer is showing itself more. And because of the work you're doing and the work I'm doing, women know to be aware of this and to advocate
Yes.
for themselves and to make these stronger comments about no, this isn't normal. I want to get it looked at, right? They push the envelope more. And so, yes, there's an increase, but it's not that there's an epidemic. It's that we're doing what we're supposed to do, right?
Okay.
That's how I like to look at it. Also, we're out there educating people and they're advocating for themselves, and it's being diagnosed earlier and treated earlier, and the life expectancy is longer. And the hormone replacement therapies of the past that were creating this rage and prolific breast cancers in these women's because of the estrogen content of it feeding into that type of cancer cell development is looked at in a different way. And again, I try to look at the glass half full. So I want individuals to understand that you're hearing about it more, but it's not that it's an epidemic. It's that the education is out there and it's our strength and our voice that's making these numbers go higher.
Great. I cannot wait until I create a teaser video for when this episode comes out, because I'm going to put that on there. Yeah, no, that is a fantastic way to look at it. I'm going to go forward thinking about it that way, but also make sure that I continue that work in educating people. So with that, I do want to talk about what you're doing in your survivorship. Tell us what all that looks like in your life.
Right. Wow. Okay. So we talk about survivorship. I turn the paradigm on that and I call it thriver. Like, I'm a thriver. I faced this ugly diagnosis twice. And look at it. Like, I can find the glass half full, right?
Yes, you can.
This is crazy to me. I don't get emotional over this. Like, I think it's honestly that I've been so far removed from it for a period of time. Like, you're in it and you're breathing it. And I've been a little bit farther removed, that I'm having a little bit of, I'll call it what it is. I think it's PTSD. It's just like talking about it here with you, going to get blood draws. My mom actually had to go to a doctor's appointment in the same building as my oncologist, and that's where I had my treatments. And I said, "Do you want me to drop you off in your office?" And she's like, "Yeah, that'd be great, fine." And I don't think either one of us thought about it, but I suddenly got off the floor. I couldn't move. I was literally paralyzed, and I didn't realize how visceral these feelings are, but I'm so removed from it that it's deep inside of me. So yes, I'm thriving, but it's always there. It's always there. It's always a part of me. Like I said, I've had 6 set of breasts in my lifetime because I've had so many complications from my initial surgery. I've had to have mesh put into my abdominal wall because the vascular surgery compromised it. Like, so many complications, not from the cancer, but from the effects. I wear a sleeve when I fly because I'm paranoid of lymphedema. And just even having 2 children and knowing that I'm not a gene variance, and still it's a familial history. What does their future hold?
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm doing today. I'm continuing to tell stories. I'm continuing to advocate, to have conversations like these, because you have to be open and honest, and you have to have hard conversations and thoughts about it. Your comment about someone asking you to reach out to somebody and share your journey, I learned the hard way too many times that we can't do that. We're not the ones that have to reach out. We have to tell our friends, tell your friend to give them our phone number. And when they're ready to hear our story, we're more than welcome to share. Like, I'm an open textbook. I don't mind sharing at all. But if I share my story to somebody who's not ready or isn't in the right step of their journey, they'll be so mad. They'll be so frustrated. They'll be so disillusioned that it won't help them get to the next step. Right. And I always say, if I had to face this diagnosis once, twice, whatever, God willing, that's all it is. Right. That if I can help others in their journey, then it wasn't worthless. I'm giving a service back. I'm sharing and allowing somebody to have a little comfort and softening. But if they're not ready to hear it, then it doesn't work. And I want to share that with people too, who might be listening, is that we're always here. We're always of service. This is what we give back, right? But remember that we can't reach out to those that are diagnosed. They have to reach out to us.
Yeah. And that is something that I learned very early on, because I remember when people wanting to connect me with other people, I am the one I remember that reached out to them. They did not reach out to me. And so, usually when somebody texts me and says, my friend's going through this, can I connect you? They'll connect us on like text or on Facebook, or I will give them my number. And I
Right.
just say, whenever you're ready, give me a call and I am more than happy to talk with you.
Right.
And I think that is such a great point to bring up because you're right. And I never actually go into my own story unless they ask me to. They
It's a lot
ask
about
the
reconstruction.
questions.
Actually. A lot of the questions around chemo and reconstruction, not really about diagnosis, right? Like it's more about what should I expect?
Yep.
What did you do? What are your recommendations? All of that. Yeah.
Yeah. David, I would love for you to talk to our audience about what people might misunderstand about being the partner of someone going through cancer. Like you talked about, always needing to fix things. What else do you think that people need to know about being a caregiver?
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit in terms of communication and being open and working through the questions and being that resource, because when you meet with doctors and you're going through this, there are so many options and things that are being presented to you. Like you mentioned, your husband was taking copious notes at each of these appointments because there's so much that they're throwing at you in so many different directions and decisions. And so to me, one of the biggest things is really being that support and a second pair of ears in a room, because it is so hard. You are dealing with the emotions of what's happening to your body, and it's hard for you to even sometimes focus and listen to what somebody was saying to you. So having that really a second resource in that room to understand what they're telling you and what some of those decisions are, and then working through that together, communicating and discussing those things and options and choices, some of those things, as part of that discussion. I often say that, poor Mara was, when you're pregnant, you're always tired and you have brain fog. Well, now imagine being pregnant and then going through chemo with all of those things. So really it's just being that supportive effort and that supportive piece of your partner and helping them through the process, and and trying to clear the path of the direction that you need to go, because it's so hard to decipher all of that. But I appreciate the fact that we have a strong partnership and we have a strong communication that has made it a much easier process for both of us to get through it.
Yeah, so that question that I asked Mara at the beginning, who was Mara before breast cancer, who was David before this breast cancer, and it strengthens your marriage. I mean, I will say that it didn't go without having a normal marriage during the chemo, because my husband and I got in some crazy fights over some things. He bought a dirt motorcycle right in the middle of my chemo treatments, and I was so mad at him. And we talk about this on the podcast. It's like we were still husband and wife and we could be fiery, fighting about stuff like what kind of a breast surgery I was going to have, whether he was going to buy a motorcycle or not. And but I think that getting through those things and still maintaining just your everyday life of being married, which being married sometimes isn't really easy, but I know it strengthened my marriage. What do you guys think?
For sure.
Absolutely.
It was a huge ability for us to connect and to get stronger. And we are two A-type personalities that like to control and coordinate and organize and do all these things. So certainly when we can't control was probably the hardest thing. I mean, I have a cute little anecdote, I guess. Mara had no control over half the things that were going on. And so she would get mad because I didn't.
No control over anything, nothing.
Many things, most things. But she would get mad because I didn't squeeze the sponge in the sink. Like that's what we were arguing about, right? So those are the kind of things that, we had to find something that we can control and that, was driving her crazy. And that's what we ended up fighting about. Not anything huge or major. It was just these little things that man, I need order in this world. Please help me.
To this day, it's the same. I mean, I control the dishwasher, right? Because there's so few things that we have control over even now. I guess if you're talking about what's life after, yeah, I mean, I thrive, but I still have my PTSD. Like it's just, there's things that I live with because of what happened. And I often need to explain where I'm coming from because of what's happened to me. The other thing I think is really important in this thrivership piece of it is that, and maybe it's because I have a family history and because I always say, like, I was shocked but not surprised, or I was surprised but not shocked. I don't know exactly which the right word is, but, obviously when you get the diagnosis, you're like, oh my God, it's happening. But at the same time, it was always something in the back of my mind. And like I said, David and I talked about it even before we got married, but it's this visceral, like, I am not going to let this disease kill me. I'm just not.
Yeah.
Like, I can go outside and get hit by a car and, that might be the end of my life, but I'm going to control this outcome as best as I can.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, face it, and I'm going to talk to my body, and I'm going to talk to this experience and just tell it it's not going to kill me. I refuse to let it kill me. There's just no way. And I think that's a critical piece in thrivership or survivorship, and that having that partner that can support you and allow you to go through these emotions and these feelings is so critical. The other is the community that you have around you and how they support you, right? And that they embrace it the same way that you do. David's always was so surprised when I would tell somebody, and literally they would melt on the ground. Like they would just have these doe eyes, like, deer in headlights. And I could see what was happening in their heads. They're like, oh my God, she has to do it again. Oh my God, she's pregnant. Oh my God, what's going to happen to the baby? Oh my God, is this going to happen to me? Oh my God, I can't help. How can she handle this? And then they would just literally melt. They would just become wet rags on the ground. And I'd have to pick them up. And David's just like, how do you do that? I'm like, because I refuse to let that happen to me. I refuse. And I want people to see my strength. I want people to see my fight, so that God forbid it happens to them, they can model that behavior. They can allow themselves to have the same positive outlook. The next thing I wanted to bring up, because you're bringing up all these things in my brain, is that you have friends who want to be there and they want to help you, right? And there's so many pieces of that come of that. You want to be left alone quite a bit. But how can people actually help you during this time? They can bring you meals. They can go with you to chemo appointments, are usually the best, because usually your partner has to work, right? Somebody has to work. You have to have insurance, or else you're totally not going to be able to survive this thing, which we can, as a whole another podcast to talk about the healthcare system and not only breast cancer, but everything, right? But also the gift of giving, right? Here are these people that are down on the ground in this puddle, and I bring them back up, and then they're like, how can I help you? I want to help you, because they feel so helpless, Jamie. They're so scared. They're so scared for themselves. They're scared for you. And it sounds selfish that they're scared for themselves first, but they do. They internalize it, and they're so scared. And how can I help control the situation? And by the patient saying, oh, it's okay, don't worry, I don't need anything, you're taking a piece of their control away, right? You're actually not servicing them. So if you can come up with a list of things, when you're at Costco, call me. I'll tell you if I need something, right? If you're around my neighborhood, come water my garden, right? Like simple things that make them feel like they're helping. To help me with carpooling with the kids, whatever it might be, something that's not so intrusive or invasive. I always said, I will not let anybody do my family's laundry. I'm sorry. I'm folding my own underwear. Like I can't let other people do that. But something that's just not, there's the food, there's the this, there's the that. And telling people, no, I've got it. It's almost hurtful. It gives them like an ouch, right? Like, oh, that kind of hurts. So coming up with a list of things that people can help you with is critical.
Yes.
The other is that you'll have friends that will want to share something with you, like a fight they had with their husband, like a 4-year-old giving them talk back, or whatever it might be that they're dealing with, a situation at work. And they'll start to tell you the story, and then they'll be like, oh, wait, I'm sorry. You're going through so much. The last thing you want to do is hear about my drama. And
Yeah.
I would always say, please, please tell me your drama, because the last thing I want to talk about is my life right now. And I still want to be that friend that helps you. I still have my wits about me. I might not have my memory, but I have my sanity. And I still want to be the friend that helps you
Mhm.
too. So don't take away my ability
Yeah.
to still be an engaged individual, right? And again, coming back to treatments, there's so many advances of it. Cold caps allows women to have this normalcy that they never had before. I didn't have the option of cold
I,
caps. And,
I did. I did. It was just that I was too late and it was very expensive.
but now it's more for, like these things are evolving and becoming more of the norm in treatments and allows for normalcy. Even our ports, my port scar is like my badge of honor. If I didn't have that port, my cancer journey would have been so much
Mhm.
harder. Right. So, like, there's so many small yet important things that happen during this period of time. And it is a finite period of time. And we have to allow ourselves to remember that too.
Yeah, very good advice. And I think that both cancer patients and friends and caregivers, they all have things to learn about how we have a conversation around this diagnosis and how we should allow people to help us out. That's why when my husband said, "No, we don't need a meal train," I'm like, "What are you talking about? I want a meal train." I've never had a meal train. Okay, let me just take it all in, right? One of the things that I learned that I actually say now when I am supporting a friend is I say, "How would you like me to show up for you?"
That's perfect. Right.
And most people are like, God, nobody's ever asked me that before. And I had a friend of mine that said, well, I might need maybe just a meal, or I really don't need anything. I don't know what you, and I said, no, that's not what I'm asking for you. I'm asking how you want me to show up for you, even emotionally, and she's like, well, I've never been asked that before. And I think it's a really important question to ask so
Yeah.
that, there's no assumptions. Do you want to really be left alone, or would you like, I had a friend of mine call me up one day and she goes, "Hey, I'd like to come over and visit you. And I know you're going to be like melted into the couch because you're just going to have chemo that day, but I'll just come over and sit on the couch and read and we don't even have to talk." And she did. She came over, she sat on my couch while I was all vegged out. And she read her book and we didn't even talk about anything. She just sat with me. And I told her, I said, that was probably one of the most amazing days,
Meaningful.
just
Yeah.
knowing that you were there. And oh my God, I get emotional about that. Hey, friends, we're going to pause our conversation here because there's still so much more to share. In part 2, Mara and David open up about life after treatment, why knowing your family health history matters, what everyone should know about early detection and breast health, how to advocate for yourself, and the practical advice they wish every patient and caregiver knew from the very beginning. I hope you'll join us next week for the rest of this powerful conversation. Until then, take care of yourself, know your body, and remember, find it early, change the outcome. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.